I missed my fiancé's family dinner to take my sister to the ER. His reaction to this got him disowned and landed him in jail. On the day I was set to have dinner with my fiancé's family, tragedy struck and my sister's corneas perforated, putting her at risk of going fully blind. I texted my fiancé apologizing and saying I would miss dinner as I was the only available person to take her to the hospital. Well, he called me absolutely furious, demanding I get my sister a cab and go to his house for dinner ASAP. I told him that wasn't going to happen and that he was out of order to even ask me to do that. I then texted his mom and told her what was going on. She was really supportive and told me to stay with my sister Caitlin and let her know how the operation goes. A dinner can be rescheduled. Caitlin's health can't. I also spoke with his brother, who was equally as understanding. I stayed with Caitlin. Her operation was a success and I got her back home about 9 p.m. Her wife had ordered some Chinese and offered me some, which I happily accepted as I hadn't eaten since lunch. With that, I didn't get home till about 11 p.m. and my fiancé Rob was already asleep. Rob was very short with me for days after, and we ended up having a huge fight where he told me that I should have put his brother and family before Caitlin. He said he was embarrassed going to the meal without me. I responded that I was embarrassed he thought I would put a meal before my sister's health. This led to another week of awkwardness between us before we finally sat down and we sorted it out, or so I thought. 8 weeks ago, Caitlin got her graft, and so far everything is going really well with it. On Saturday, we went out for dinner with his family. His family were all asking about how Caitlin was doing, and I showed them a picture of the stitches in her eye. I thought that everything had gone really well until we got home, and he got really angry, saying that I shouldn't have brought up Caitlin's health issues, and I shouldn't have shown them the picture. I argued that they'd asked about her, and asked to see the picture. It ended with him telling me that I needed to put him and his family before Caitlin, or else we weren't going to work. His family will come before mine once we are married, so I should get used to it. I went upstairs and packed a bag. I broke up with him there and then. I'm now at my mom's house, and he's been bombarding me with text and calls since I left. Update 1. Once I decided to end things with him, I knew that the main issue would be getting him out of my house. I own the house. I got in touch with my stepdad's friend, who is a landlord, who then put me in touch with his solicitor. He didn't have time to see me in person that day, but we did have a phone call where he gave me my options. In the UK, we have something called a Section 8 notice. This is a 14-day eviction notice, and the solicitor said this would be the quickest way to get him out. However, he could try and contest it if he wanted to, which would lead to court dates, and could take months. I asked him to draw up the notice and date it for Friday, the next day. I'd already made the decision to end things with him after work on Friday, so that he could have the weekend to sort through his emotions before work on Monday. On Friday morning, I texted Rob and asked him to meet with me at our local pub after work. He quickly agreed. Not only is the pub a public space, but my stepdad and a few of his work friends go in there every Friday after work for a few pints, so I knew he would be there to step in if I needed him. When I got to the pub, Rob was already there, and my stepdad was stood at the bar with his workmates. I sat down with Rob and got straight to the point. I told him that it was over. I couldn't be with someone who didn't give me any support when I was going through one of the scariest moments of my life and expected me to drop my family for his. It didn't matter what excuses he could come up with. I wasn't interested. I'd made up my mind, and we were done. He stared at me in shock for what felt like an hour, but was probably only a minute or so. He then started saying I couldn't be serious. We'd been together for 7 years, and I was throwing it all away. I could never find another guy like him. I responded to the last comment with, I don't want a guy like you, that's why I'm ending it. I need someone who will support me when times get tough, not get annoyed that the world isn't bowing down to what he wants. I then handed him an envelope with the eviction notice in and my engagement ring. I told him I was giving him a few weeks to find a place and be out of my house. Then I stood up and walked over to my stepdad, who had bought me a much-needed drink, and stayed with him until my ex left, still looking in shock. I knew he wouldn't approach me whilst I was with my stepdad, as he has always been a little scared of him. Once I got back to my mom's house, I had one single text from him saying he wasn't moving out and was going to contest the eviction until I'd come to my senses and got back with him. We are not over, was how he ended the text. I just turned my phone off and decided to deal with the legal side of things on Monday. There was nothing else I could do. Saturday morning, I woke up and turned my phone back on and had another text from him saying that he would move out if I paid him $10,000, as that's what he'd paid towards bills whilst he had lived at the house. He paid for half the electric, gas, Wi-Fi, and Sky package. Note, the Sky package is only as expensive as it is because he has to have every sports channel known to man, so his half literally just paid for the sports channels. I'd already asked the solicitor about this though, and he'd assured me that I didn't owe him any money, as he hadn't contributed to a mortgage or any renovations of the house. It was just general expenses. He also knew that I don't have $10,000 just lying around. I was irritated by this and decided to ring his mom Sally to see if she could talk some sense into him. She was appalled by what I told her and said she would speak to him. She called me back about an hour later and asked me to meet her at the house. I met her at the house with Caitlin, and Sally said that Rob's brother was on his way back home and they would have Rob out by the following afternoon. She hadn't even spoken to Rob, just his brother, but she promised he would be out. The next morning, I got a text from Rob calling me all the names under the sun for getting his mom and brother involved. I blocked him, and a couple of hours later, Sally texted me to let me know he was out and staying with her. I thanked her, and she told me that she would like to stay in contact, and I happily agreed to this. I went back to my house after work on Monday, changed the alarm code, and my stepdad changed all the locks for me. My stepdad is also arranging for a friend of his to install cameras around the outside of the house. This will be done done over the weekend. Sally rang me on Tuesday, asking if we could meet up as she had some things she wanted me to know. So we met for lunch that day. It was at this time that she told me her ex was a controlling a-hole who was incredibly selfish, and the selfishness was what she had seen in Rob for so long. That's why she had commented on him being like his father, but she had hoped that was the extent of Rob's attitude and he hadn't picked up his dad's controlling behavior, which to be fair, he hadn't up until this whole episode. She had left Rob's dad after he became an alcoholic and laid hands on her. To her knowledge, her ex had never reached out to speak to Rob or his brother, and they hadn't spoken to their father in years. However, she'd found out on Sunday night that Rob was back in contact with his father and had been for the past year. His dad had been putting lots of thoughts into Rob's head about how he is the man of the house and his family is all that matters. This had fed into Rob's selfish tendencies and had amplified them tenfold. Sally said that she had told him to find somewhere else to stay ASAP, as she couldn't even look him in the face. Then Rob and his brother had a huge argument that ended with his brother telling him that as long as Rob is in touch with their dad, then he will have zero contact with him, even going so far as to tell him to spend Christmas with their dad, because Sally is going to his house and Rob isn't welcome. When Sally took Rob's brother's side in all this, Rob flew into a rage and said he would move in with his dad. He then left the house, but came back a couple of hours later looking like he'd been crying. Turns out that his dad doesn't want him living with him and basically said he could be on the streets for all he cares. He's not putting a roof over a grown man's head. Sally thinks that Rob is now starting to realize everything he has lost due to him listening to his dad and has seen his dad's true colors. Sally is incredibly disappointed in him, but he's her son, so she is trying to be there for him as best as she can. However, she still wants him out as she doesn't trust him anymore. His brother still won't have anything to do with him. She has also told him to stay the hell away from me as I don't need to be brought into this, and he has promised her that he will. Update 2. I hadn't heard from Rob in weeks, but yesterday he showed up at my house. I had the chain on my door, so opened it with that still attached. No way would I let him in. He basically told me that he had nowhere to live. His mom isn't speaking to him, and his dad won't put a roof over a grown man's head. His words, not mine. He asked if I would take him back, or at least let him live with me. No way in hell would I get back with him, and getting him out the first time only went easy because his mom stepped in to help. He had threatened to take me to court knowing that if he did, it could take months to get him out, and then said he would only move if I gave him $10,000. I contacted his mom, who was furious about that, and she turned up with his brother and forced him out. I told him that there was zero possibility of him ever living with me again, and that we were 100% over. He started shouting at me and calling me all sorts of names, so I threatened to call the police if he didn't leave and shut the door. He then went crying to all our mutual friends, and it managed to get back to his mom. She called me and asked what happened. I told her, and she then informed me that she had put her house up for sale and was moving 300 miles away to be nearer her other son. Her and Rob had a huge argument about this, and she finally kicked him out. Since then, he's been couch surfing, but with Christmas coming up, his friends aren't really happy with having him on their couches when they have kids and are meant to be enjoying the festive season. He's been kicked out of 3 friends' houses in 10 days. She told me I was right to refuse him, but I've since had other friends say that they feel sorry for them and that I can just let him stay in my spare room until he's back on his feet. I then asked them to put him up, but they said they would but don't have room, and if they had a spare room like me, then they would let him stay. My family and his are on my side, but I'm starting to doubt myself with what a couple of my friends have said. Update 3. I met up with Rob's friends, Nadia and Zach, for lunch today, and I have to say that it was informative, for sure. When I got to the cafe, we agreed to meet. Nadia was there on her own. She immediately told me that Rob rang Zach on Thursday morning, saying he had nowhere to go and could he stay with them for a few days. Zach spoke to Nadia and they agreed he could stay in their guest room. Rob went to their house after work and they had a long talk where Rob told them he has a flat lined up but can't move in till January. Zach and Nadia agreed to let him live with them until January, as long as he followed some basic rules and paid for his own food. The rules were things like no bringing women back there, and if he went out drinking, he had to be quiet when he got back. He agreed to all this and paid for a Chinese for them all that night. The next day after work, Rob went to meet his dad in the pub for a few pints. When Zach and Nadia went to bed, Rob still wasn't home. They were woken up at about 2 in the morning by Rob arguing with a woman. Apparently, Rob had met this woman in a bar, took her back to Zach and Nadia's house, got his pleasure, and then told her to get dressed and leave once he was done. She'd gotten angry, which started an argument where Rob was saying some horrific stuff to her. Nadia took the woman downstairs and got her a taxi, whilst Zach stayed upstairs arguing with Rob. Once Nadia had got rid of the woman, she went back upstairs and tried to calm Zach and Rob down. At this point, Rob decided to take out his frustrations on Nadia, calling her a beach and telling her to do something useful and make him a sandwich before bursting out laughing like he'd made the funniest joke ever. This made Zach lose it, and he socked Rob. Nadia managed to get Zach off him, and Rob was shoved in the guest room and told to sleep off the alcohol. The next morning, Nadia went to her mom's after telling Zach to get Rob out of their house. Zach agreed, and after Nadia left, he woke Rob up and told him to pack his things and leave. Rob tried to apologize and begged to stay, but Zach was having none of it and kicked him out. Going off the timing, I think he left there and came straight to my house. On Sunday, Zach texted Rob to meet up so that they could speak, and they met up in a pub. Zach has been friends with Rob since they were 11 and has never seen him act like he has been doing, so he wanted to find out what was really going on. He managed to finally get the truth out of Rob. Basically, Rob has been in contact with his dad for a lot longer than he told us. By this point, it's over 2 years. His dad is a raging misogynist that believes a woman's place is in the kitchen and bedroom. A man's place is to rule the house and be waited on hand and foot, as well as deciding who can and can't be in their lives. He's been dripping this poison into Rob's ear, and it's really taken a hold of him. Zach told Nadia that he just doesn't recognize Rob anymore. Rob wants to start living his life the way his father has told him he should. When Zach pointed out that Rob's dad is 62, living in a crappy one-bedroom flat, not had a real relationship since Rob's mom left him, has no friends, his family doesn't speak to him, and that he's the type of guy that when he walks into a pub, people finish their pints so they can leave and get away from him, Rob was furious. He told Zach that his dad is just misunderstood. Zach responded that people understood his dad, and that's why they stayed away from him. He's toxic. This pretty much ended their conversation, and Rob left. Zach did find out that Rob does have a flat lined up for January, so that was true, and that he's found a B&B he can stay in till the flat is ready at a minimal cost. Zach and Nadia have also decided to go no contact with Rob, as they don't need that toxicity around them. I thanked Nadia for the info, and we agreed to keep in touch. Update 4. I've just had a call from one of Rob's friends, and it looks like he's going to be spending Christmas in prison. Apparently, he went out on Saturday night with his dad, and they got into an argument which turned physical. Rob isn't a fighter. However, he is bigger and stronger than his dad, and it ended with his dad falling backwards and hitting his head off a wall, knocking him unconscious. The staff in the pub called the police and an ambulance, but Rob left before they got there. Rob's dad had to go to hospital, where he still is. I'm unsure of his exact injuries, but they're not life-threatening. He must also be awake as he is pressing charges against Rob. However, they won't keep him in, unless absolutely essential at this time of year. Rob was arrested on Sunday morning at the B&B he's been staying at and had to appear in magistrate's court on Monday. Due to him not having a fixed address right now and the fact that his dad is still in hospital, he has been remanded on a Section 18 with intent. Unless he can find permanent address to go to, then he won't be getting out until his trial at Crown Court. Finding this out has actually given me a sense of peace right now. Update 5. I went round to Nadia and Zach and had a cup of tea with them whilst they filled me in on what's going on. Rob will be in over Christmas, but will likely get out early January. His lawyer is trying to get the charges reduced from Section 18 with intent to a Section 20. I only found out today that a Section 18 with intent is one step down from attempted unaliving, and you're looking at double digits in prison if you get found guilty. Section 20 is a lot less severe and is usually a 2-year suspended sentence for first-time offenders, which he is. His lawyer has said that if he pleads guilty to the Section 20, his charges will be lowered to get this one over and done with ASAP, as the courts are ridiculously backed up right now and prisons are full. Zach went to the B&B he was staying at and got Rob's stuff, which is now sat in his garage as one last favor to Rob. I've also spoken to his mum, who has basically washed her hand of him for the time being. She thinks that he needs to learn his lesson, and maybe spending Christmas in a cell will teach him how much he's lost the plot. She has spoken to him and said that he's now saying the right things, but only time will tell if he means them. He is talking about moving to be near his brother to get away from their dad, so maybe he has seen the light. His brother has refused to go onto his prison call list, so Rob can't contact him, so I don't know how that will work. As for his dad, he is still in hospital with a broken hip and has had to have surgery to fix it. Update 6. Rob spent Christmas on remand in prison. He didn't get out until the second week of January, and that was only because his mum agreed to let him stay with her again. He had his plea hearing the first week of February, where he pleaded guilty to a Section 20 assault. He then had to wait until last week to get his sentencing court date. He was going to get 3 years, but the judge knocked time off for pleading guilty and for mitigating circumstances. That left him with a 16-month sentence that was suspended for 18 months. As part of the conditions for his release, he isn't allowed anywhere near his dad. He has to go to counseling for his supposed PTSD, and he isn't allowed to drink alcohol. He even has an ankle monitor that tests his sweat every half an hour for alcohol and will alert probation if he gets a positive result. Luckily for him, his boss has let him go and work at their main location in the city that's half an hour away from here, and probation was happy for him to live there as well. He moved into a flat there this week, so I don't have to worry about running into him. I haven't spoken to him at all, and I don't want to either. He has tried reaching out through a couple of friends, but they've respected my decision and told him to move on with his life. However, I did speak to his mom yesterday, and she said that she thinks he's depressed, but so far he's doing okay. She's the one I got all of this information from.